Good afternoon and thanks for watching THV11 News at Noon. I'm Mackailyn Johnson in for Michael Aaron. Here are some of the stories we're following this afternoon. Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv may soon fall to Russian forces, which are quickly advancing, the latest on the invasion. Plus, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is President Biden's Supreme Court pick, the first black woman ever nominated. More on the historic selection. And there are thousands of phone apps and at-home tests you can use to keep track of your health. We're taking a closer look at the benefits and risks of do-it-yourself health. But first, the weekend is almost here, and after the week we've had, I know I'm hoping for some sunshine. How are things looking for us, Nathan?
Well, good afternoon, Mackailyn. Yeah, it's been a wild weather week here in Arkansas. The first half of the week we had to deal with severe weather and then winter weather. But the good news is we're finally starting to see some sunshine out there this afternoon, and that's helping the temperatures a little bit. We're at 35 in Little Rock, still below freezing in Conway and Russellville. Still a lot of clouds hanging on, especially into East Arkansas. And those clouds are going to be stubborn this afternoon. So many spots, I think you'll stay pretty much into the 30s through the course of the day. Here's what we're looking at wind-wise. We've got the winds coming in about 10 to as much as 15 miles per hour for some parts of the state. So that adds a bite to the air. So if you're going to be out and about, make sure you bundle up. You need the heavy winter coat, you need the gloves, the hats, the scarves, because it feels like 26 right now in Little Rock, feels like 21 in Stuttgart, feels like 23 in Russellville. Your planner today across the state, hoping for a high of 40 here in Little Rock, but many spots off to the north and northeast will stay in the 30s. And even down in Camden, if you're stuck with a lot of clouds, that 48, that's not going to be happening. We're not done with the unsettled weather just yet. Another system moves in this weekend, and I'll have more on those details coming up.
The United States needs to be clear in its unequivocal support for Ukraine. We need to be clear in our condemnation of Russia and the actions that they have taken. And we must impose the most severe sanctions that's available to us and understand that this is not a short-term concern, but this is a long-term concern with the actions that Russia has taken under the leadership of Mr. Putin.
Governor Asa Hutchinson sharing his thoughts on the ongoing Russia invasion of Ukraine. His comments come as Russian forces continue to advance into the capital city of Kyiv. President Volodymyr Zelensky says attacks are targeting civilian buildings and says his country is left alone to defend itself. President Joe Biden held a virtual meeting with NATO leaders this morning, a day after announcing severe sanctions targeting Russian banks, oligarchs and their families, as well as high-tech exports. Western allies have also impose their own sanctions, but there is bipartisan support on Capitol Hill to go much farther.
We need people in London, we need the British government to step up with more targeted sanctions against Russian billionaires in their city.
I'd love to see Russia kicked out of the SWIFT transaction system.
But President Biden says European allies are not ready to do that just yet. World leaders are also being criticized for not targeting Russia's energy sector, which is the largest driver of its economy. And there are growing fears the conflict in Ukraine will lead to another refugee crisis in Europe. The UN estimates more than 100,000 people have left their homes already, and many will try to find safety across Ukraine's borders. Riley Carlson has more from London.
With lines of cars stretching for miles, many Ukrainians are fleeing Russia's invasion on foot instead, carrying bags, wheeling suitcases, shepherding their children. Mariana's husband stayed behind. All men must fight for the country, she says, for peace, to prevent attacks, for everything to be all right. Ukraine has restricted border access for men aged 18 to 60 in case they're needed to fight. Nearly 11,000 people have already crossed into Romania. Thousands more have gone to Poland and to Hungary.
I have a 5-year-old kid, and I have also my sister who has 2 kids, so we are really scared and don't know what will happen here.
UN agencies say if the conflict drags on, as many as 5 million could flee.
There are no winners in war, but countless lives will be torn apart.
They're trying to get away from scenes like this. Damaged homes and subway stations turned into bomb shelters. A few, like veteran Dmytro Dovzhenko, are crossing the other way, re-enlisting in the Ukrainian military. I hope I will be back, he says, and I hope Russia will be destroyed. But for those driven from their homes, no one knows how long they'll be away or what they'll come back to. Riley Carlson, CBS News, London.
The UN also says fuel, cash, and medical supplies are running low in parts of Ukraine, which could prompt more people to flee. And even though it's half a world away, experts warn we should prepare to experience some of the impact of the crisis in Ukraine. But it's not just fuel that's going to cost us more. Russia and Ukraine are also big suppliers of metals, corn, wheat, and agricultural products. The trickle-down effect will make our grocery bill higher, as grocers will feel the impact of higher fuel prices and pass it on to the consumer. UCA Assistant Economics Professor Jeremy Horpadal says this is just more bad news for us.
It's going to vary depending on what business we're talking about, but it's hard to find a silver lining where it'll actually positively affect any business.
Horpadal says he is also concerned about how this attack could possibly impact our current supply chain.
We do need to move from the pandemic to a more normal state. And I think that's true across the board, whether you're looking at a Democrat governor saying that or whether you're looking at a Republican governor. That's where we are in America, and certainly Arkansas.
Governor Hutchinson is pushing for Arkansas and the rest of the country to start moving from the pandemic to a more normal state of living. The thought comes as Arkansas continues to see a decline in COVID cases and hospitalizations. Since Tuesday, 1,630 new infections have been reported. In that time, our active cases dropped by almost 1,500 and now sit at 7,500. We're seeing a similar trend in our hospitalizations. As of this afternoon, 545 people are still in the hospital with COVID. And the push from the governor also comes as the CDC prepares to significantly loosen mask-wearing guidelines later today. Right now, masks are recommended indoors for people living in areas of high transmission, but sources say under the new guidelines, the vast majority of Americans will no longer be advised to wear masks inside anymore. We're going to have more of those updated guidelines tonight at 5 and 6. President Biden has chosen federal appeals court judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the Supreme Court. She is the first black woman ever nominated to the nation's highest court. Skylar Henry has more on this historic nomination from the White House.
Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson had long been considered the frontrunner ever since President Biden made a campaign promise to nominate a black woman to the nation's highest court.
It's long overdue in my view. I made that commitment during the campaign for president, and I will keep that commitment.
The 51-year-old appeals court judge is a Harvard Law School graduate who was a law clerk for Justice Stephen Breyer, the man she will now replace if confirmed.
She brings experience having been a district court judge and now a court of appeals judge for a brief time. And that is incredibly meaningful given the huge volume of cases where that sort of experience is really key.
Judge Jackson's experience as a former public defender would also be a first for the Supreme Court. It's experience that both she and President Biden have in common in their lengthy law careers.
We've seen a lot of folks who served as public defenders and civil rights lawyers be elevated under this administration because there have been far too few of folks with that sort of experience.
Judge Jackson is familiar with the confirmation process, having gone through it last year when she was nominated to the district court. This time around, the stakes are higher, with the reward of attaining a seat on the Supreme Court. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
A new CBS poll shows 29% of Americans are enthusiastic about the president nominating a black woman to the Supreme Court. Another 35% say they are satisfied. And more people are monitoring their health from home. But is that a good thing? Coming up at 12:17, the pros and cons of the do-it-yourself health movement. Nathan?
And we're still seeing a lot of clouds around the region, but temperatures have managed to climb above freezing for parts of the area. Another round of rain moves in to begin our weekend, but it won't stick around for Sunday. I'll have that forecast and warmer trend going into next week coming up.